Hey, power couples, and welcome to this week's episode.
Hi, you guys.
All right, honey, we got a great topic today. It's how intimacy will increase your revenue.
Ooh, I like this one already.
And I'm sure you're going to want to know, right? I mean, who doesn't want to increase their business?
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
And you can do that by having greater intimacy with your spouse.
And who doesn't want that?
Now that's a double coupon
That's a win-win.
day. That's a double coupon day right there. So we've got Monica Tanner today. She's a relationship coach and has her own podcast, Secrets of Happily Ever After. And it's a phenomenally successful podcast, over 100K downloads. And we've gotten to know her a little bit. She's an entrepreneur. Her husband has a business. They're raising 4 kids. And she's kind of pivoted from the typical entrepreneur with a brick and mortar business to now a relationship coach, because she really wants to help entrepreneurs and just marriages in general do better. So she's got some great nuggets for us today that's really going to show us how to increase the growth of our business while we're being attentive and prioritizing our marriage and family.
Yeah, who doesn't want that?
So what do you think, honey?
Oh, I'm excited.
Ready to hear this?
Let's go.
Got your pen and paper?
Yep, got it in hand.
All right, well, let's go. Let's let her in. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. Hey, Monica, thank you for joining our podcast.
Yes, we're so glad to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So since we already kind of teed it up with the intro ahead of time, let's just get right to it. And so I know right now you're looked at as the marriage expert, right? And we'll get to a question around that later. But really, you kind of started your, professional life more in the entrepreneurial space. And of course, your husband has a business too. And then you're raising 4 kids. Kids started coming along. And so one of the things I want to know is not the to-do, how to balance it all, but I want to know the mistakes that you might have made early on trying to balance it all, right? That's what we always
try to do it all.
Yeah, we're trying to do everything, right? And so
Yeah.
I'd like to know, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know, what are 1 or 2 mistakes that just kind of stand out that you made?
Yeah. Well, I would say probably the most prominent and maybe destructive mistake that I made early on was thinking that I had to be perfect at everything, right? So I wanted to be the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect business owner, the perfect house cleaner, the perfect everything, right? And so I thought that if I wasn't perfect at everything, then the bottom was just going to drop out. And so I actually paralyzed myself with anxiety about having to be perfect at every little thing. And I have since learned that there are seasons in life. There are big pushes, right? There are times when you are more focused on business building activities, and there are times when you are a little more focused on home management or, being a really great mom. I would say that there are times in life where it's being a mom, it requires more of you. Young children obviously require a lot more of you than right now when I have teenagers running around. They are a lot more independent. They take more mental and emotional, but not quite as physical. So it's important to remember that there are times of life for everything, and it's not ever going to be balanced. So the mistake I made was thinking that if I wasn't perfect at everything, that if I wasn't doing everything, that I was going to lose it all. And so I did really operate under that fear of I'm going to lose it all if I don't do this all perfect. And I made myself literally crazy because I couldn't let anything go. So.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, that's common, right? We're
And
trying to
as
do everything.
women, we want to be perfectionists at everything. We want to be good at everything. And we think, oh my gosh, and we compare ourselves. Oh my gosh, look at Monica. She's got 4 kids. She's got a business. Her husband has a business. She's got it all together, as opposed to kind of like doing what we can do and being best at it. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing I learned from all of that, and the most important thing to remember, and that has served my clients now, is that there are big pushes in business. There are times in child parenting things that take more time and energy, but to always be investing in your marriage, like no matter what time of life, even if it's a busy push in your business, or parenting is very taxing, or it's a time to be building. We've gone through times where we've been building homes. There's always going to be very busy times in life, but I think the most common mistake that people make in their marriage is thinking that they can push, like, when we start making this much money, we'll focus more on our marriage, or when our kids are older, we'll focus more on our marriage. And that is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see couples make. They come to me years later. Most of my clients have been married 20, 30, or even 40 years. And the biggest mistake they made is thinking that they would focus on their marriage at this undefined time. And so I think what I would most want to say to avoid that mistake is, no matter how busy life gets, you should always be investing in your marriage relationship, because that's going to stick through time. Whereas, your business, you might sell it or you'll retire, your kids are going to grow up and leave, but your marriage, if you take care of it, will be there throughout, all of those years and all of those stages. But you have to be intentional and you have to invest in it.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Because I know early on when I was starting our consulting business, and you're working really hard, and I was also transitioning from a corporate space, so working till 2 a.m. And then so when I'm thinking, okay, once we get over this hump, is one thing, but then in business, okay, once we're scaling it or whatever, then I can dial it down. But then we're also consulting with business owners, and then, as you're talking about, some of them have been in business over 20 years, and they're still doing the same thing, grinding it out. And I'm thinking, okay, when is that moment you can dial down, because these people aren't doing it. Right? And so for me, it was like early on in our business career was like, oh, okay, what does that even mean? What does that look like? So you're talking about that undefined moment, right? We say when we get to here, but even sometimes if you put a benchmark, like say, once our business makes the first $1 million, then I can start to dial down. But for some reason, because we're so goal oriented, we just put another
You're
goal.
just going to push that back. Yeah.
So you're talking about a little bit of non-negotiables, right? Like whatever's going on in life and business, that there's aspects of our relationship that have to be there. So talk to us about, what does that look like for you? What are some of those non-negotiables?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is 2 of the things that I teach. Well, I'll give you the top 3 things that I think are really, really important. The first one is just to decide to make your marriage a priority. And that's a lot easier said than done, because most people will say, if you ask them, what's your biggest priority in life, or, what's most important to you, they'll say, oh, my marriage, my family, those things are really important to me. But if you dig down and you look at, what's on their calendar, how are they spending their time, their energy, and their financial resources, those stats tell a very different story. And so, the number one suggestion, non-negotiable, that I would give is that if you say that your marriage is important to you, you better be able to back that up with how much time, energy, and financial resources you're investing into that relationship. So that's number one. Number two, I call them daily connections. So even if you work with your spouse, which I know that the two of you work together, you probably spend a lot of your day together working on things. But that's very different than actually connecting, learning about each other's inner world. So even if you're spending 24/7 together, which most couples do not, you're still experiencing the world in a very different way. You're seeing the world through your lens, and your partner is seeing the world through their lens, through their experiences, through the things that they've learned. So spending at least 20 minutes every single day, so there's 1,440 minutes in a day. So if you're spending 20 of those minutes really getting to know your partner's inner world, you're asking them questions like, what got you really excited today? What did you learn that was new today? What's stressing you out? What are you looking forward to? What can I do to make your life easier for you? Those types of questions are really getting to know what's going on inside your partner's mind. That is of utmost important and non-negotiable. So throughout our lives, my husband and I have had those connecting daily connections in the mornings. We've done them in the evenings. We've done them after dinner. We've done them after the kids have gone in bed. So sometimes now that all of our kids are in school, he can come home after his workout and we'll do our 20 minutes in the middle of the day. So there's really tons of possibilities of how you can do it, but it's being intentional about really spending that 20 minutes and finding out. And even if your partner's traveling, you can still call each other on the phone and spend 20 minutes connecting on that higher level, not how is your day? It was like, what are you experiencing? I want to be a part of what you're experiencing every day. So those are daily connections, really, really important. And I suggest that everybody end those types of emotional connecting moments with some sort of physical connection. So whether it's a kiss or a hug or holding hands, looking into each other's eyes, and like being able to show that we've connected emotionally with some sort of physical connection. So that's number two. And then number three, non-negotiable weekly date nights. So this is 3 hours a week. So you get 168 hours in a week. This is 3 of those hours should be spent with your partner doing something that makes memories, that that you're learning something new, doing something new, experiencing something new. You're not talking about the children, you're not talking about business, you're not talking about finances or anything else stressful. You're just channeling that, getting to know you, having so much fun, hanging on your every word type of energy. So that means eliminating distractions. And these dates don't have to be expensive or elaborate or far from home. They just have to be, again, intentional. So you put them on the calendar, you plan for them in advance. It's not like one of those things where you're pulling out of the driveway and you're like, what should we do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. Like, you plan for them in advance so that you can build anticipation, so that you can look forward to that time that you have to spend together. You can, do something new, or you can do, an old favorite, take turns planning them, and always end date night with some sort of physical and sexual affection for each other. So those are my 3 non-negotiables. And the really cool thing about this, and I gave you some time stats. I gave you 20 minutes out of the 1,440 and 3 hours out of the 168 hours. And that, if you compute that all out, is less than 3% of your time. So what I'm telling you, non-negotiable, if you're willing to spend 3% of your time, undivided attention with your partner, it will skyrocket your creativity, your earning potential, your connection, your intimacy, all the things that make it possible for you to be really successful in every single area of your life.
That's good, because I like the stat when you throw out the less than 3%, because sometimes as you're throwing that out, you're like, oh, 20 minutes. Oh, 3 hours.
But you say it's a priority and it's
Yeah.
important to you,
Yeah.
but you're like, oh my gosh, 3 hours, that's a lot of time. 20 minutes. I don't have 20 minutes.
And yeah, the reality is it's not that long, and we probably waste more time anyways on social media
Right.
than the 20 minutes. And so
I mean, you're going to the bathroom,
yeah,
seriously.
Right.
I mean,
exactly,
really.
exactly. So what that does is it really starts to make sure you cultivate not just the relationship, but also you're talking about intimacy too, right?
So, what are some good conversation starters for you when you're on your date? Because a lot of times, we have kids, we have work, and we get together. What do we talk about?
Yeah, well,
Kids and
that's
work.
awesome. Well, I mean, truthfully, you can just Google conversation starters and there's hundreds out there. But I've created a free download, which I'm happy to share with you, that are 51 questions to ask your partner to get to know them better, which is a really fun. And just, you just want to find out about what they think about, how they process information, what have they experienced in their lives, right? What would they do if they had $1 million or all the time in the world, or they could travel anywhere, right? I mean, how often do we really ask our partners those questions that you would have asked them 20, 30 years ago when you were dating? Because I think most people think just because I circulate in the same space as my partner, you live in the same house and you sleep in the same bed and you eat at the same table, that doesn't mean that you know everything about your partner, especially what they're thinking about, what they dream about, what excites them, what they're learning, who they're becoming, what their goals are, all of those things. You want to make sure that you're regularly checking in what they fantasize about, right? I mean, there's so many dimensions to who we are as humans. Even if you are together all the time, you definitely don't know everything there is to know about what goes on in your partner's brain.
Yeah, definitely make sure that link is in the show notes, because those are always helpful. We like those. We have good friends of ours. We got some of their cards. They have cards. So it
That
was
they
like
wrote.
86 conversations or something like that. But that goes along with date nights sometimes, or a
I
trip.
bring them to the restaurant sometimes and we ask each other the questions.
Yeah, but we
Totally,
need
yeah, you
more. We
keep
need
them
new
in the
ones. And
car.
so we're always looking for those. So we'll definitely get
you.
on that and download it and put it in the show notes for sure. Because sometimes you're just like, you start getting in the rut of asking the same questions, right?
Right,
more
right.
the what you alluded to earlier about more the typical stuff, like how was your day, and what happened, that kind of stuff, the basic stuff, but not like going into really knowing what they're thinking about and what they're feeling.
Yeah, and
Experience.
there's all those memes of like, when you're sitting at a restaurant, you can tell the couples who aren't married from the couples who have been married for a long time, right? It's the
The ones
couple
that are
that
on the
aren't
phone are the
talking,
ones that are married.
they're not engaging, yeah, they're on their phone, and that's silly. Like, if you're gonna go spend a bunch of money on a meal, you might as well like be fed, together emotionally, and all the things, be connecting, than sitting there and just like eating food together. I mean, how lame is that?
Oh yeah, we were sitting across. I remember at this Korean barbecue place, and we were sitting across his mother and son, and they're just on the phone the whole time. He's playing games. He's got his headphones on, and he's not a little guy. He was probably in his 20s.
Yeah.
I'm guessing,
Oh no.
or elite late teens in the 20s. And then she's on her phone, and then the only time they talk to each other is when the food came to put it on the barbecue pit, whatever. It was just, I was just like looking at
That's
this
so
going,
sad.
oh my gosh, I want to take a picture of that. I was like, that was just so sad. But I love these tips, and that it doesn't really take a lot of time to really connect and stay connected relationally, and because ultimately, if you don't, right, the busyness of your life and business can impact intimacy, correct?
Absolutely, 1,000%.
And so you even had, like, before we even got on, started recording, talked about how you can actually grow sales and have greater intimacy.
Yes, do tell.
Yeah.
That seems like an
And here's the
oxymoron.
thing. Right. Here's the thing that's really cool, because intimacy, in my definition of it, the way that I talk about it, the way I understand it, and the way I've experienced it, is truly the creative power. I mean, we are given this opportunity to connect with each other, and that's how I mean, we physically create life together, but not only create like another human being life, but create our life. It's the power of creativity. So when you're intimate with another person, not only is it the power to create, but it's also putting two different perspectives together. I always say that two heads are better than one. You cannot, it is physically impossible to see the same thing from the same angle. Two people are always going to see something differently. And so if you embrace that, and if you use that conflict and those two different perspectives to your advantage, you're always going to be more creative. You're going to have more inputs into whatever it is that you're trying to create, whether it's a business or your, dreams or your home life or parenting or whatever it is that you're endeavoring to do. If you truly access both people's perspective through intimacy, you're going to unlock the power to make more money, to be more successful, to impact more people, to create something even bigger than you could ever create on your own. And that's not to say that you have to be in business together. I always tell my couples that your partner doesn't have to be passionate about what you're passionate about to be a supportive partner. They just have to be passionate about you. And so if you share the right things and you ask the right questions and you are intimate in the right way, then you're going to be able to take advantage of and unlock the power of another perspective in your business and in your life.
And that's always a challenge, though, right? About the differences should complement, but a lot of times it conflicts. And so how do you give us maybe one tip of how do you've got a couple that is getting at it right. The differences are conflicting.
Well, I mean, conflict is always, learning conflict resolution skills is always a bonus. It's like always a really great thing that no matter how great you think your marriage is, you can always be improving on communication, conflict resolution, those types of things. I mean, those things are always, always valuable. But I work with a lot of entrepreneurial couples. So you've got one member of the couple who is an entrepreneur, and they think, okay, I've got all these things going on at work. I'm dealing with, Facebook and ROAS and ROI and like all of these things. And my partner doesn't care about that stuff or has no idea or can't help with that, right? However, if you would actually take some time to share with your partner what you're going through, maybe issues that you're having, with the morale of your team, or, something that you might be nervous about, or some problem that you're trying to figure out. Maybe don't share all the numbers or all of the details or something like that, but you can share like, today was a really rough day at work, and let your partner know how they can support you, or maybe they have really good insights or input into how you could overcome some huge challenge because maybe you're just too close to it. So there's lots and lots and lots of ways that you can share with your partner, whether they're in your business or not, to unlock that potential of new ways of solving problems, new ways to see things, new ways to show up, new ways to, create. It's really powerful when you stop seeing your spouse as holding you back and start seeing them as like rocket fuel. Like investing in your relationship with your partner is like rocket fuel for your business, for your life, for your kids, all of it. I mean, there is absolutely no downside to investing in your marriage relationship.
Yeah. No, that's good. And so, did you have something?
No, I just thought it was great too.
So, was there what's a practical way you'd kind of dig into that creativity to have more intimacy, but then also the illusion to how does that create more sales? Right?
Yeah. Great question. Okay. Well, so I think the easiest way to say this is if you're not investing in your relationship, there is research that shows, one, that couples will wait 6 years in an unhappy marriage relationship before ever seeking help. So that's just miserable in and of itself. But also couples who are divorced, it shows that their income earning, that their net worth goes down by 77%.
Wow.
So that
So
much, wow.
just by, yeah, and I mean, you lose 50% of whatever but a lot of the loss that's that encompasses is because if you're not on the same page with your partner, if you're not sharing with your partner, you're not investing in your marriage, then chances are they're not supporting your financial goals. They're probably spending, all kinds of things because they're unhappy in the relationship. So just by investing in your relationship, you're protecting your assets. And I know that's like a very surface level, like not a good reason to invest in your marriage, but it really is, because when you invest in your marriage, then you can create goals together. You can work on where you're going when you share your vision. And so when you say a really practical way, what's a really practical way to create that intimacy? It's to share your vision with each other. What are your goals? Where do you see yourselves in 10, 20, 30 years, right? I always like to have my couples do this exercise where they're standing at the top of this mountain, holding hands together, and they're looking out over all of the things that they've accomplished, overcome, achieved together as a couple. And what do they want that to look like, right? There's going to be all kinds of pitfalls. There's going to be places where the path went in divergent ways. There's going to be quicksand. There's going to be, all kinds of obstacles and things like that. But when you look out over all of it, how do you want to feel? And how can you feel that way now? So, future forecasting, creating a vision, working towards that together. Those are all really practical ways that you can build up that emotional, physical, and sexual intimacy that's really going to take your business to the next level.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. And there's another good conversation starter.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Because we've probably talked about vision and goals and stuff, I think, when we're dating. And then I think as the years go on in marriage, you stop talking about those things. And then a lot of times your initial goals when you're dating kind of change a little bit, or your vision kind of changes. Because now you're married, you got kids, and you start thinking of that, and you start thinking about grandkids, and now your vision kind of expands, I guess, all that to say. So great to always revisit that, or to do it if you haven't even done it before. So
Well, and it could get better too, because if the two of you are talking about what your vision and you can put them together, it could be like, oh my gosh, I never expected that. That's even better than what I thought I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's the key to collaborating right there, is that, you can implement both visions and make this even grander vision that you could have ever come up with on your own.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. How did you get into this kind of marriage coaching space? Because that's not how you started, right? In your career or whatever. So how does this evolve?
Really interesting. I was raised by two therapists. My parents are both therapists.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
And incidentally, they divorced when I was 12 years old.
Oh, no.
And, I was that kid that was so enamored with fairy tales and romantic comedies, and I would twirl around, and, I always just expected to live happily ever after. And I remember when I was 12 years old, my parents announced that they were getting a divorce, and I was like, wait, what? This is not how the story is supposed to end. And so I think at that very young age, I started really studying the world around me for all the clues of what makes relationships work and happy and happily ever after and all of those things. So I did study it in college. I studied sociology. It was just a study of group behavior, relationships, all of those things. And and then I took a break from that when I got married and we started a family, and I just helped my husband grow his business, which is, it's a service-based pest control business. So, nothing like what I thought I would do. But when my youngest child started school full-time, I went back to school as well to get my master's in marriage and family counseling, because at that point I had experienced all kinds of things in my marriage. I had learned all kinds of things. I'd thought that it was over a few times, just thinking that maybe happily ever after doesn't exist. but we overcame a lot of obstacles. And so I knew that it was possible to overcome these things. And I wanted to help other families learn how to do it as well. Incidentally, I dropped out of that program because I didn't want to be a therapist. And I became a coach. I started the podcast and I started studying. I mean, just devouring books and podcasts and going to seminars and learning everything I possibly could about marriage and what makes marriage work. And I realized that my experience in marriage had a lot to do with entrepreneurship. I was married to an entrepreneur. We started our business together. I, in my younger years of raising children, needed something that wasn't just, wiping butts and cleaning up poo and, all of the things that young motherhood entails. So I actually started, grew, and sold a business with my young children at home. So I knew a lot about entrepreneurship. I knew the strains that it put on marriage. And so I think that my specialty is really helping entrepreneurs navigate both building a business and a marriage that support each other.
So you said you started, grew, and sold a business with your kids?
Yeah,
So what
and it
was
was
that?
it was a little boutique business where we made handmade products. So I don't know if you remember when vinyl signs were really all the rage. You put the sayings, you cut out the vinyl and put it on a wood sign. So I had the whole wood workshop in my garage. It was awful. I think back about it now and I'm like, how did I do that? I was always covered in sawdust and I was always picking out these little vinyl sayings and painting these boards. And I'm sure I drove my husband absolutely crazy. But what we ended up doing is I partnered with a friend and we would get all of these moms, basically moms, some dads, but not a lot, mostly moms that made handmade things. Some of them sewed, painted, built things, created all of these really cool handmade stuff. And we'd put them in a model home for a weekend a few times a year, and people would come and they would shop and they would look at the model home and they would see all the cool so it helped the builder. My partner's husband was actually a builder, and it would all of these moms got the opportunity to showcase their creativity, which is something that's always been really important to me, is creativity. So we grew that business and then I sold it right before I went back to school. So
That's
Oh my gosh,
cool.
I love it. And you were doing it with the kids and the other moms.
yeah, the
Great.
kids learned how to make cute stuff. We always had like a kids corner, and we were what we were doing is teaching kids how to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They would create their own things, and they would, they'd have to pay for their booth, and they would sell
Start
it.
them young.
So my kids actually learned a ton from that. So it was really fun being able to take what I knew about entrepreneurship and hand it down to my children as well. So.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. I love hearing those stories.
Yeah.
Getting the kids involved with the business or a business in some form or fashion, and it sounds like it was almost like a community thing. And then you helped
Yeah.
another business, right, sell
Yeah,
their
it was
property because you had your
awesome.
stuff in there. So it's kind of a win-win. That's awesome. So any pressure being looked upon as a marriage expert?
Yes.
You know what? I gave up on having a perfect marriage a long time ago. I actually do not have a perfect marriage. We fight all the time, and I'll talk about it on social media or in my trainings. The because I'm always learning. I'm always improving these skills. Like I said, the communication, the conflict resolution, the intimacy, the connection, all of those things are so important, and you're never going to get it perfect. And I would worry if there was no conflict. I worry much more about the relationships in which there is no conflict versus the one where people are using conflict to kind of kickstart intimacy, learn more about each other, collaborate. Because if there is conflict, it means that both partners are showing up fully, right? That they're, giving their input on the relationship, because no two people, like we said at the beginning, are ever going to see things the same exact way. So if you've got no conflict, it means that one person is disappearing or just keeping the peace or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy, because that creates resentment, which is always going to kill intimacy. So you want two partners that are showing up, that are giving their input, and with that, you're going to have conflict. So learning how to manage that conflict is amazing. So my husband and I, we grew up so differently. We have different ideas, different opinions, different ways of seeing the world. We're different in every way. And so that does create a lot of conflict. So I would say that my marriage is not perfect, but I'm learning all the time how to
But that
make
only
it better.
means that there's a lot of intimacy.
That's what I was thinking too.
That's right. The makeup sex is amazing.
Because we'll have, we've had two or three friends, couple of friends that have over the years that have said something like that, where we don't fight, we don't have argument, we don't
I know.
have conflict.
I'm like, seriously?
And we're just like, oh, good. And then we drive home like, well, that's scary. I always say, somebody is just stuffing something.
Exactly. And that's going
good,
to blow up at some point.
That's not a good sign later on, and I don't want to be in that same room. So we're going to end here with this last question. I don't know if it's a doozy or not, but we all have blind spots in our marriage, right? And so, what's yours?
Yes.
The blind spot in my marriage? Oh, that came out of left field.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gotta make you think.
The blind spot in my marriage.
Or maybe just you.
Ooh.
Maybe just you.
All right. Well, I think it's important for everybody to have a coach, because the reason why is because you can't see the label from inside the bottle.
Right.
So, we all have a tendency to see ourselves as, really good and having good intentions and, always kind of taking the higher road. And it's much easier to see where our partner is falling short and where our partner could do better and those types of things. And so I think that's just a common blind spot for all couples. That's just human nature, to see ourselves as good and everybody else as the problem. Yeah. And so I've noticed that when we do struggle, when we do have kind of the bigger, more difficult conflicts, it always comes down to I'm kind of propping myself up and putting him down. So I would say if there was a blind spot in my marriage, it's a common blind spot in most marriages, but it's always good to have someone who can point out to you where you might be missing something or telling the wrong story or, otherwise kind of making yourself the good one and your partner the bad one.
Mm-hmm. Trying to win.
Yeah.
It's a zero-sum game where there's got to be a winner and loser. So
That's right.
Win at all costs.
Yeah, I've had to work on that one too. Stop trying to win.
And if there's another one,
stop trying to win an argument.
I was going to say, if there's another blind spot, I would say it's that my husband and I are both probably the most competitive people you've met. There you go. So that becomes a problem sometimes.
As long as you're on the same team, that's okay.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
The problem is when you're trying to compete against your team member and you got to win against your team member.
Family game night gets pretty heated sometimes.
Oh, there you go. Oh yeah, that reminds me. We were just in Park City skiing.
Oh, here we go.
We had they had an arcade for the kids in the resort. And so we became friends with the gal that's in charge of the activities for the kids and stuff. And she told us one day, she said, "Oh, Saturday at 3:00 is 1 hour of free games. So all the arcade games were free for that hour." And so we're less like going at it. So air hockey, with the whole story about air hockey when we're dating.
Oh, we love
Kaylee's, she's nice and sweet. Getting to air hockey, she wants to kick my butt. She's sweating.
No, I don't sweat. Listen, honey. I
was like, oh, whoa, okay. That's fun. Well, Monica, thank you so much for being on. This was amazing. You laid out some great nuggets for us, and definitely, I'm going to have the show notes for those questions, the starter questions for sure.
Yeah.
And there's also a nice little intimacy quiz I saw on your site too, so I'll make sure to link on that. And of course, follow your own podcast, which is amazing. And so definitely want to hear more nuggets from that. So the links to that and the your social accounts are there too in the show notes. Any parting words for us as we close up?
Parting words would just be, marriage is an adventure. Don't take it too seriously. I mean, take your marriage seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Just enjoy the ride and really know that you're never alone. If you're experiencing some sort of conflict or you're struggling with something, there's always others out there that are struggling with the same thing, me included. So it's always, always good to have great marriage mentors, somebody who can point out your blind spots to you, somebody who can actually see the label since you cannot. But, ask for help. Don't suffer in silence. Don't think that, nobody's ever been through this, or, that you're weird. For relationships are hard, but they're so, so, so rewarding.
Yeah. Good words, Monica. Thank you so much. And for you, as you're listening, I know this obviously has impacted you because you're still listening. So please share this, leave a review. And until next week, God bless. And we'll, talk to you next week, right?
See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.